Welcome to our pricing podcast, Pricing Interviews with the Experts. I am Lisa Fisher, Senior Director of Marketing and Communications with the Professional Pricing Society. Today we will feature our special guest and member of the PPS Board of Advisors, Lydia Liello, CEO and founder of Capital Pricing Consultants, LLC. Today's topic of discussion is Pricing and Selling, Strategies and Tactics to Win with 21st Century Procurement. This is also the title of a one-day workshop presented by Lydia with Chris Provines, who is CEO of Value Vantage Partners, at our PPS Spring Pricing Workshops and Conference in Miami, May 2nd through the 5th. Hello, Lydia, and thank you for joining us today on our podcast. We are so happy to have you and look forward to your pricing expertise.
Thanks, Lisa, for the kind introduction. I'm delighted to be here.
Awesome. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. So, Lydia, how can sales and pricing best work with 21st century procurement to win?
So, Lisa, that's really going to be the goal of explaining this to our participants throughout the workshop. What we want to do, Chris and I together, is provide a unique experience for these participants. You know, 21st century procurement has changed so much in the past 15 years and become so sophisticated that the majority of our pricing folks, and certainly all sales folks that deal with procurement, keep reiterating the challenges that they're having in working with procurement. And so Chris, as not only the CEO of Value Vantage Partners, but also as an award-winning professor at Rutgers University, and I have teamed up so that we can really give participants a view from both sides of the table, if you will. So Chris from the side of a professor and myself from the side of an actual corporate buyer. I served at a Fortune 500 as a procurement professional and was responsible for tooling. And so one of the things that we want to do is to kind of share that experience with our folks and give them live case scenarios, ways that I would have, for example, pushed price or used value levers that we'll talk about to actually force prices down. So we'll give them live case scenarios that they can really work with. So the session's for anyone in pricing or sales or marketing that has to deal with procurement. And for pricers, if they're not directly dealing with procurement, we want to arm them with the information they can pass on then to their sales folks so that it really becomes a team effort and a win for their companies in how they're dealing with procurement overall. We're going to really help give them the training that I know firsthand the procurement folks always get. So procurement gets an awful lot of corporate love and corporate budgets for things like training and professional development. That's not always the case in marketing, and so we want to make sure that we're giving our folks that same level of training back so that they can really combat some of the tactics that they're seeing and the strategies being implemented against them.
Excellent. So Lydia, you are an expert speaker with us at our conferences, and there's lots of workshops being offered. What would you say makes the perspective of this workshop so unique?
Well, I think what's really different here, Lisa, is this is going to be very much hands-on and participative. Chris and I's goal is that the attendees are able to walk away with very quickly implementable tactics, strategies, and plans of how they are going to immediately start to work with the procurement professionals that they touch, whether that be through their sales force or through that they are working with directly if they're doing the negotiating. And so we've got a variety of different examples as well as participation scenarios where we'll walk through, for example, 8 value levers that a procurement professional will utilize to drive price down or to drive a better deal, if you will. So we'll walk through each of those 8 and then go through an actual scenario so that the participants can practice and see how they can actually use that in their specific situation.
Excellent. And that's a good segue into our next topic. Why is procurement, do you think, having such a significant impact on companies and therefore on suppliers that they serve, or that serve them, I'm sorry?
So, Chris will go into this in a great deal of detail during the workshop, but from an overview, what we really see is that purchasing or procurement, as it is technically called, has a very significant impact on total company dollars. Every company is looking at their functional departments and saying, what can you do for me? Sales, how much money can you bring in? Procurement, how much money can you save? Pricing, how much profitability can you extract for me? So each department is being looked at for what do they bring into the table in a company. But procurement historically over the past 15 years has been proven through a great many studies that they are contributing by far an order of magnitude more than any of the other departments. And that's the reason that they're getting, quote, all of that corporate love of the budget dollars for training and the professional development, because the corporation knows that for every dollar they're spending in their procurement department, they're getting that back many, many times over. And so Chris has all the statistics and the details around the studies to share with the group. But essentially, more is coming out of any dollar being spent in procurement. And so as they are continuing to build on training year over year over year, they become more and more sophisticated. And that's certainly a challenge. And I think the other piece, too, is as our world and our marketplace have just become so completely global. We used to talk about globalization 10 years ago as that was something not as common. And now that's almost an assumption with almost every company you deal with. And that also changes the dynamics. So it really gives them much more leverage than they've ever had before.
Excellent. So a lot of times our attendees want to really go back to their companies and put to use a lot of the tools and techniques and strategies that our workshop presenters give. How will you and Chris tie together all of this information so that it's really usable for the participants?
So we're going to go through things like there's 16 specific games a buyer plays, and we're going to use industry-specific examples. Chris is going to provide medical examples, and I'll provide automotive and manufacturing examples so that we really can give a wide cross-section of how a specific game looks, for example, when it's presented by a buyer in each of those industries. We'll talk about the 5 top negotiation mistakes you should never make with a sophisticated buyer and what those mistakes look like, and then how you could spin it differently and manage that negotiation in a much more positive way so you don't make that mistake. And we'll tie all of that into a negotiation scenario towards the end of the workshop so that not only have the participants seen each of these sections, if you will, but they can see what it looks like in action themselves as they're looking for those gains, as they're looking for the 8 levers of value that a buyer is going to want to push or pull with them in those 5 negotiation mistakes. So we'll really tie that up in a master negotiation session.
Awesome. It sounds very interactive. It's just not you and Chris standing up kind of giving a PowerPoint presentation, which is much more engaging. Our attendees find just based on what they're saying. So I'm actually really excited for you guys to present for us this coming May. You'll also, I understand, explore elements of attitude and a balance of power in the procurement-sales relationship as a basis for your course. Why is that so important?
Well, really, Lisa, that lays the groundwork for all relationships that we have, whether professional or personal, in terms of the attitude we bring to it, as well as the balance of power that we maintain in those relationships. And that is especially true when you're talking about a buyer and seller relationship. So I want to speak to that specifically from my time as a procurement professional and the ways that that was important to me and ways that that paid dividends, if you will, for my suppliers, depending upon the kinds of attitudes that they brought to the party and brought to being a supplier of mine. So we'll go through just some level setting of things that will work well for participants as suppliers and things that they might want to step carefully around and avoid. A lot of it is common sense, but there's some things in there that they may not think about, and especially around that balance of power. It's always interesting in negotiation situations. The assumption is always that that buyer has the ultimate power, and they do in some cases. But when it comes to personal power and ways of treating each other, you can change that very quickly with 1 or 2 sentences. So I'm really excited to be doing this. Looking really forward to sharing the experience with Chris. It'll be a lot of fun for us.
Awesome. And we are looking forward to having you and Chris. We hope that our listeners out there are getting excited and geared up for Lydia and Chris's workshop entitled Pricing and Selling, Strategies and Tactics to Win with 21st Century Procurement. Lydia, thank you, as always, for joining us. And for further information on this topic and others, you can reach Lydia via email, lydia@capitalpricingconsultants.com. Please be certain to follow Lydia on Twitter @Lydia D. Liello, and don't forget to connect with her on LinkedIn. For additional information about our upcoming events and our other offerings, please visit our website, pricingsociety.com. We are PPS, and we are dedicated to pricing, training, and education. Don't forget to get social with us and subscribe to our blog, thepricingauthority.com, and follow us on Twitter as well and Periscope @Pricing Society. Stay tuned for our monthly podcast where other industry experts join us to share their pricing best practices. Lydia, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in May.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Looking forward to it.